All right, we are live. Hello, Vlada. How are you?
Hi, Shankar. Great to see you.
It's good to see you. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. I'm just checking here on my phone if we are indeed coming through because there's always a 5 to 10 second
Absolutely.
lag, but I can see us. Great. Awesome. Well, for those of you who are early and on time for this live stream, please consider sharing it on your profile so that we can get this good information in front of as many people as possible. And also, if you have questions that come up throughout the live, please put them in the comments. And then towards the end, if we have time, we will address those. If we don't have time, I'm sure Vlada will look at those comments and then get back to you in time. So let's start, Vlada. You have a very interesting story, and I'm very curious, and our viewers are curious. What is your journey in SaaS, which, for those of you who don't know, stands for Software as a Service? And then also, how has that eventually led to Elevator Lab?
Absolutely. Well, by all accounts, I consider myself an unlikely tech founder. I'm not technical. I'm female. I'm immigrant. I built a successful corporate career before jumping into startups. So nothing in my background actually suggested that I should be a tech startup founder. And that's why I believe that everyone can do it with the right context and the right things on their side. And so what brought me to startups is on the one hand, a problem that I experienced personally when my daughter started at school in New York City, and I saw how outdated and fragmented parent communication was. And I knew that what powered my journey was really great support I got from my parents, amazing education. I wanted to my daughter and every other kid out there to have that amazing team of parents and teachers on their side. So that was a meaningful problem that I've experienced, and I was passionate about solving it. But that was not it. What was it is the fact that I really wanted to put myself to the test, if you will, right? And take my top MBA, Wharton School, take away sort of the corporate career that I built and said, can I do it or can I not do it? So it was a very sort of a personal challenge, if you will. And I knew that if I don't jump into it with 2 feet, I will, 10 years from now, I'll regret it. So I'll ask myself that question. Will I, be more upset about all the challenges and ultimately not succeeding as a startup founder or not trying? And so for me, that answer was very evident. And so I quit my job and started the journey with ClassTag. Built an amazing team, great co-founder, and we scaled to 5 million parents and teachers, tens of thousands of schools across the
Wow.
country, raised multiple rounds of funding from amazing investors, both focused on education and sort of more generalists, and then ultimately sold that business last year to a strategic that now takes and aligns our mission with a broader mission of focus on student success, and exciting opportunity for many of my team members and those that we kind of grew together through company building to join a bigger team and get broader responsibilities, and gives me opportunity to go back and give back to founders. And so as I started reflecting on what really makes me tick and brings me energy as opposed to drains, right? I think one of the things to realize through the journey is that we really need to lean into things that fuel us, that give us energy. And so for me, that is working with startup founders. I love the adrenaline, I love the drive, and I certainly have the know-how, having built my own company and just been through that journey. And so I'm thrilled to support founders as part of Elevator Lab, both with one-on-one mentorship as well as the courses that we are starting to roll out, focus on important areas of go-to-market scaling, product market fit, and then fundraising as well.
Wow, I love it. You saw and solved a real world problem. You combined it with challenging yourself, and then you grew it to where you could have an eight-figure exit. Let me repeat that, an eight-figure exit. Wow, I mean, please, dear audience, take advantage of asking questions, because that's I don't meet a person like that very often. And then you also chose to, after all your experience and success, you chose to find a way to give it back to the community, pay it back with Elevator Labs. I love that.
Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
yeah.
And just sort of building on that, I think the reason why I wanted to go into mentorship is that on the one hand, I see a lot of folks who are mentoring who haven't necessarily been through that journey. And I think it's really important because you feel it in your skin, both the mental challenges that a founder go through, as well as the know-how of various things that you need to evolve and learn as you scale the business. But also because I'm so recent in this post-exit journey, right? I think once you get to, 2, 5, 10 year mark, it is everything changes so rapidly. And now I'm still in this very much operator mentality. I've just took my hands off the wheel, if you will, and eager to jump in and really be the engine for others to help them scale.
Exactly. There's always a huge difference between theory and actually having
Right.
been in the trenches and still having the dirt on your hands, right?
Right.
um, yeah, if you just joined, please consider sharing this live stream. You might be the reason why someone in your network sees this and they get a breakthrough in their SaaS business. Now, speaking about breakthroughs, I think a lot of people who are going to be exposed to this footage will likely be in a area where they make about $10,000 every month in recurring revenue. And if we focus on that kind of business, what do you typically see as mistakes that they make that will make it very difficult to scale later on?
Absolutely. And I think the tricky part about startups is that every milestone requires a different leadership, requires a different organization, different mindset, different toolkit, right? And constantly, as a founder, the moment you become comfortable saying, "Hey, I figured it out," that moment everything changes and you have to figure it out again, right? So it's a never-ending sort of learning journey, especially if you are on a sort of venture track where you're raising money. All of that is at a really high speed. So you're like a high speed train, right? Just going and constantly changing. And so specifically what happens at about 10 to 20K mark is that you have something that's working. And the way you typically would have gotten to that point is by doing a bunch of things that don't scale, right? A bunch of things that just through brute force, you caught, people by hand on the streets, or you cold call, or, you really leverage all your network and network of your, sisters and brothers and whomever else you can find, right? And so you got there, you have some early customers, you have some early traction, and then you're lost because you have so much on your plate already. You have some customers to serve and some problems that are happening with customer support. You have technology kind of not particularly working maybe well, and onboarding is not great, and then you need to scale, right, all of a sudden. And so I think that the most fundamental mistakes that happens is that folks want to scale something that's not scalable, meaning that rather than saying, okay, now I've got my first 5 customers, 10 customers, whatever that is, and then going in and deeply understanding what use cases, who are your best customers, who are the personas, why exactly they're using it, right? And among that kind of noise, looking for signal, and then really doubling down on that signal and validating that with prospect, and really doing kind of what's called product market fit work, which is an ongoing journey, right? You can't get product market fit and never sort of return to it, right? It's a constant journey to improve it. But at that point, what happens is you just need to give yourself space to truly understand who are your best customers, because I like talking about it as a rule of ones, right? Where you have one persona, one value proposition, one channel, and then hitting $1 million. Once you do that, then you can say, yes, I have, something that has the early indications of product market fit. Because until then, I work now with founders who might have even 50 early customers. Maybe there's, small checks. So there's someone that 20, 30K MRR, but they have 5 different flavors of these customers. And so now they're stuck because they require different strategies, they require different positioning, and it's hard enough to get one thing right, let alone 5 things. So, and the tricky part is figuring out, which one to focus on when you're so hungry to get that traction, right? Because effectively what that means is that you have to be able to sort of fire your customers or not look for them, right? If they are not fitting your perfect persona. And that's a very, very hard thing to do. And maybe in a lot of ways, it's a counterintuitive thing to do. But if you don't do it, then you'll be pulled in 50 different directions, and it becomes impossible to scale to million and many millions. And that's what the startup game is about. It's not about getting to even $1 million, which is of course a very important next milestone from sort of 10K, but it is going far beyond that and really compounding that SaaS revenue.
Yeah, no, all those elements you mentioned, I have experienced them too, and they're actually very, very difficult to break through, because you need to give up something that's kind of working for you, you're comfortable with it, and you're very much afraid that giving up those elements the way you're doing it will destroy your business, but it won't. And what happened with me is that I took maybe a little bit too long. And if I had a mentor, someone at my side who knows what are the signals and how do you navigate through that, you just win a lot of time. And we know time is money, timing is essential. So definitely consider reaching out to Vlada if you find yourself in a similar situation. One thing that you and I have in common, Vlada, is that we are both immigrants, and I think it is safe to say that the US economy, the US markets have treated us well, right? You have a US market entry service for non-US founders. Can you elaborate a little bit on that and explain what that consists of? Because I think it's very interesting.
Yeah, well, thank you. And again, I started this as a service because, that's effectively supporting an earlier version of me, someone who is looking to scale and is an immigrant founder. And I actually don't like the term immigrant founder in general, right? And the reason I don't like it is because I think it really creates this mental barrier, and I'm seeing it in a lot of founders that I'm working with. They think that US is some sort of magical land, and it has different, market dynamics, and can I blend in as an immigrant founder, and all sorts of other stories that people are telling themselves to make it harder to build startup in the US, right? And I don't like telling stories that make things harder. I think we should tell ourselves stories that make things easier, quite on the contrary. And so that's why I've decided to create sort of US market entry. Part of it is to create a community for folks and sort of feel supported and share sort of that mindset, which again, mindset is such a big part of that startup journey, that allows you to persevere and allows you to keep going when all things might suggest the opposite, right? And just being the kind of the force and to make progress. But the second one is really the know-how, because folks might have been able to scale in their local businesses, but they use different tools, they used different channels, they use different value propositions. Typically, US market is far more competitive than any market that they might have been in before. And so if you already have a complex product, and some of the founders I work with, so let's say they have a product in Latin America that is very multifaceted, multiple monetization channels, and very broad. But if you bring that big umbrella to US and try to go to market, you're not going to go very far, because people are looking for integrations. People are, you are looking to really find a moat, find a way that is the easiest and the fastest point of entry, which will oftentimes require dumbing down whatever you've created somewhere else and make it simpler to be able to enter. And that requires understanding of sort of dynamics of the market and going kind of back to the drawing board a bit, right? It's sort of, it's in a way launching again your startup, but in a different market with different contexts and different consumers. So it's not anything you haven't done there, but the dynamic of US market are quite different based on the tools available, customers, competitors, etc. And so you have to be able to take all of that into account, and forget that you're an immigrant founder and you deserve a seat at the table. And even if your network is starting from scratch, like your startup is, you can still make it, and just go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I can relate to that. I mean, my home country is Luxembourg, and I mean, people open a brick and mortar, they hire a few employees, and things are pretty much steady after that if you don't do anything stupid. But it's very different in the US. It's much more dynamic. There's a lot more having to adapt every day. But then also on the bright side, there's a lot more opportunity, and the US market has a lot of potential to absorb your services at a much larger scale, so that it can be very profitable for you as well. I've seen that. And then what you mentioned about community, I mean, it's so important that you have someone where you can say, hey, this is the problem that I'm seeing, and you just have someone who understands. And specifically from the lens of a non-US founder, it's a very different perspective. So I can see what a huge value proposition that is.
Thank you, Shankar. And I have to say that you're probably the first person from Luxembourg that I've ever met.
Yeah, that is, we are a small country, but
mighty.
Yeah. Well, so you also have a go-to-market scaling service for SaaS companies, and you focus on repeatable B2B sales formula. Could you share maybe a success story where you worked on such a formula with one of your clients?
Absolutely. And I think, again, like anything that's repeatable, it starts from deep understanding of your customers. And there is this saying, which I absolutely love, is when you can explain your customers' problems better than they can themselves, then you win, right? And so that's really the level of insight that every founder should aspire to achieve, because then everything you're doing starts to convert and create traction and ultimately revenue at a whole different rate. And so specifically in this service, a big part of it is really deeper understanding of hypothesis, testing them, and making sure that we extract that language and help founders extract that language from their customers, their prospects, that they can then use. And then step two is really putting that to work. And what ultimately, there is a kind of a bull's eye, right? There are so many strategies that one can use and there is not a single one, right? You can say, oh, you only can scale leveraging, I don't know, Instagram ads and nothing else, right? There is always a multitude of strategies that would work, but what matters is that you find one that works first. And so specifically in B2B startups, in my experience, and that's what I'm saying with the founders that I'm working with, cold outreach that is personalized at scale, if you're using the right language, really works because it's nearly free. It's the cheapest way that you can really go to market, unlike, I don't know, LinkedIn ads or LinkedIn content creation, which is amazing. And obviously I'm preaching here to the choir, but it takes time, right? It takes time to build content, build audience, etc. And all of that are important long-term strategies. But in the short term, if your messaging really resonates, you can create very scalable cold outreach campaigns, and that's what I've done to the tune of millions of dollars when scaling my company, and that's what the templates are, methodologies that we share with founders in the program and through one-on-one mentorship as well. So that's effectively what allows you to scale quickly, get feedback from the market, and then of course you have to have other building blocks in place. Some folks that I work with are technical founders, so they run away from sales, and so there is a kind of a mindset shift there, and just ability to understand what the objections are, how to overcome them, how to learn from those conversations so you continue to improve even 1% every day. That turns out to be a really massive shift on experience.
Great. So you work with technical founders and then, of course, also non-technical founders because you are one yourself. One thing you mentioned that is interesting, and tying that back to the differences in different nations and cultures, how you approach a cold call. Have you seen any differences between the US and say a country that you are very familiar with, and what are those?
Yeah, I think I think it's in general, I would say U.S. culture is a lot about presenting things in a bigger way. I'm trying to find a diplomatic way to put it, right? So if you're just saying you're good, it means you really are in bad shape and you're just miserable, right? But because if you're good in the US, you would say, I'm awesome, I'm amazing, oh my God, right? I'm, jumping with joy. That means you're really good, right? And so there is this kind of curve, for me coming from Ukraine, people are sort of much more kind of straight to the point. So if if it's not my day, then, I'll tell you it's not my day, right?
Right.
But then, and so that translates into a lot of language, right? And it translates into cold calling and outreach. And so for me, I remember early on to even say, hey, my solution is exponentially better than whatever is in the market, even though I was like, oh my God, this bug, we forgot to fix this bug or that bug or whatever, right? So I'm always thinking about all the things we didn't do, as opposed to, really leaning into, what we do really well, right? And I think folks that are in particular immigrants, right, who are entering the US market, they need to feel awesome and they need to know how to really pump up their kind of the value they're creating and focusing on that value, right? So there is sort of some cultural differences for sure. And then the other thing is, I think the biggest thing that's sort of stopping folks from making progress is fear of rejection, fear of failure, right? And to me, I talk about a sort of scientist mindset, right? The idea that you can't really fail as a founder. Your startup can fail, your experiments can. So if you separate yourself and your ego, because it's all about ego most of the time, right? If you separate your ego from, the experiments that you're running, that most of them fail by definition. I mean, that's how experiments in science work, right? And so just say, hey, my first experiment today will be to do 30 cold calls and see if I can, I don't know, sell whatever I'm selling, right? And then, if everyone tells you, to walk the other way, then, your experiment failed, but you didn't, right? And so I think that, creating that separation is what it takes, I think, to stay mentally mentally fit, but also make progress in this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I would say fear of failure is pretty much a universal thing. Probably find that around the world. I can very much relate to the language and the amount of emotion you put into it. Here in the US, I'm very known to be calm tempered, and it's hard to see excitement in me, but that's just because when I'm excited, that's not at the level it would be if an American would say it. So over time I have learned that a little bit. I think I still have room for improvement, because an American would say like, oh yeah, well, Vlada, that is all so terribly interesting what you share with us here tonight. Well, let's go into the next question, and that is people that are at the $100,000 monthly revenue limit. I imagine, Vlada, tell me, that's a very different situation to those that have $10,000 in monthly revenue, right?
I like the Luxembourg.
$100,000. What
I
is
like the Luxembourg version better. Can we go back?
all right. But what? So if someone comes to you that does $100,000 in monthly revenue, and they want to identify an aspect in their product to market fit service where they can scale, how do you help them do that?
Yeah, absolutely. At that point, it typically has to do with actual organizational structures. And that's a point when it's a very critical point when typically folks will start transitioning from founder led sales to actually building out a sales organization and go to market organization, which is a really tricky time, because hiring sales and marketing folks is one of the toughest things to do, because if they can't sell or market themselves, then they're really no good. But many people sort of stop at that. And so really, it's much more about building out the team. It's much more about now transitioning from sort of founder wearing 6,000 hats and doing every possible thing you've been doing, and thinking about the sequence of hiring and how you really build the team to support you as a leader, right? And sort of which functions do you want to continue keeping tied to yourself, and how you really built out, in particular, go to market. That's what typically the transition is, and how to really set it up for success. I think there are certainly best practices and tools that are available. And unfortunately, it is interesting, because there is no school for founders, right? You can go and learn to be an executive, right? Or do an MBA, but there isn't really a founder MBA, right? And somehow people just expected to know it all, how to build it all first, sell, market, position, whatever, and then how to build organization, right? And that's why I think it is so critical to have the right mentors and right supporters around you, because you don't, there are things that you don't need to be creative about. It actually is counterproductive to be creative about your organization structure, for example, or your business model, right? You have to take things that have been tried and tested, and be creative in your solution, and build the best solution, and be creative in your positioning, go to market strategies and things like that, but not in the things like, how you, I don't know, maybe price your product, or how do you really build your organizational structure, how you build annual plans, how do you talk about goals and OKRs and whatnot, right? So those things are established, and so at that point, it's really a critical transition from founder to a CEO, effectively.
Yes, very critical time. Lots of difficult decisions to make, lots of difficult lessons to take, and I would argue, unless you are a unicorn, you won't won't break through that level there if you don't have help. I mean, you just need it. And I'm very glad that my audience gets to know about you and the possibility of working with you. Now, speaking of working with you, you have one program that's a free growth session, and I imagine it's not for everyone, right? So what qualifies one to even apply for it? And then if they do qualify, how do they reach out to you to get started?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're actually holding a free growth challenge next week. So it's going to be Tuesday through Thursday, May 21st through May 24th. It's 9 a.m. It's a workshop style session where we go through all the fundamentals of startup growth, starting from building killer product, growth hacks, leveraging AI, because it's such a great opportunity for founders now to scale things that don't scale, but leverage AI to do that, monetization strategies and fundraising, right? Sort of four big blocks with tangible outcomes that they can accomplish together. So that's a free service and really something that folks don't want to miss. It's going to be on Zoom, so it's not recorded, not available, but really valuable resource for founders. And then who this is for? It's for founders who have early product in market, founders who are ready to make action happen every day. And it is for software founders, software marketplace founders, but in particular, the focus is on building kind of go-to-market and building fundraisings that would be most appropriate for software founders.
Awesome. So if I'm interested in that, what do I need to do to be part of that?
So you can go to elevatorlab.com/challenge and sign up, or you can send me a DM and I will share more information, or maybe we can put it as a comment as well. I'm not sure if I can comment here.
Yeah, we'll see. You'll get the comments for sure. If I see something, I'll let you know. Let's wrap up with the future. You touched briefly on it. The future in SaaS, I personally think is very bright, especially combining it with AI. But tell me, what you as an expert, where do you see the opportunities in the future?
Yeah, I think opportunities are vast in a way. It's never been easier to start a business, right? Especially with this technology shift, which makes it easier and more difficult because it's easier for everyone else to start it as well, right? So there is certainly more competition, but what I'm excited about is the speed of iteration and the speed of testing that you can now achieve. And at the end of the day, in my mind, there are no gurus of any kind. The only guru is the customer that you are there to serve, right? And I think what my goal is as a mentor is to help you, give you tools and resources to really be in tune with your customer, so that your competition becomes irrelevant, right? What's relevant is that you are the best solution to your customer's problem, and they're willing to pay to solve that problem. And so that effectively is, I think, what's exciting to me is that, that pace of iteration is going to change. There are certainly a lot of shifts that are happening in traditional sort of industries, right? My background and my startup that I built was in education. There is certainly a ton of change that's happening in education space, in future work, or today of work already, anticipating the future, because the innovation works in some unique ways when it's sort of, it's kind of crossing the chasm, right? It's happening already, but it just hasn't crossed over to majority. So I think in a lot of ways, those changes are already here. We're just catching up to them. So I think those are particular areas that are interesting to me. Obviously, healthcare is huge. So every industry certainly will be affected or is affected by this. And what I think is of course the most challenging question is, how do you build a sustainable business in this competitive dynamic, right? Because a lot of folks, especially when they're building an AI, if there are some of these giants, right, that are, something that you build becomes really successful, how difficult it will be to replicate, right? How defensible that is, right? And something that, shouldn't be the thing you're thinking about as an early stage founder, but that's certainly one of the criteria that you have to keep top of mind as you are transitioning towards building a real business. But it's certainly an exciting time, and I'm thrilled to now work with founders across healthcare, marketing, software, education, and a lot of other industries. So lots to learn and grow with the founders.
Yeah, I mean, just now in the last 2-3 minutes, you've given away some golden nuggets here. Listen, audience, if you are in the situation where after everything you've heard, you need guidance, you know what to do, you need to participate in that challenge. And also, please, we all have friends who talk about the next idea they have in software and how to scale. Please share this video with them, because it might very well be the reason why they are a huge success. So you definitely want to be that good friend. Vlada, I thank you so much for your time, and I know we will definitely be in touch, maybe do this again, but I hope you'll get some good outreach here, and enjoy the rest of your day, everyone.
Fantastic. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Shankar.